Hey guys, today I'm doing another book review, this time on Stephen King's 2002 novel, From a Buick 8. Now, I thought it's very necessary for me to give a little bit of backstory about this book. So this book was started by Stephen King in 1999, so before his car accident, and if you don't know what that is, he got nearly fatally run over by a van in 1999. And he wrote the first half of this book or so before his accident, and he wrote the last half after he finished it off his tits on painkillers. And it shows. So yeah, I'm not a massive fan of this book, and I just think, let's just talk about it anyway. It's fun. I like talking about Stephen King, even when the books are bad. It's still a good time. Let's talk about it. So, my edition of From a Buick 8 is about... how long is it? 351 pages. So it's not an overly massive book, as you can just kind of see, but I think one of the most important parts of the book, or of any book, is the pacing. You have some long books that are paced so well that they don't feel nearly as long as they are, but then you have some shorter books that are paced so poorly that they feel a million times longer than they really are. And From a Buick 8 falls into that category. You look at this and you think, oh, it's just a quick, easy read, but it drags. Anyway, we're going to talk more about the pacing a little bit later. What's this book about? So, From a Buick 8 follows several characters at a police barracks in Troop D, but the main one of them is 18-year-old Ned Wilcox. Ned's father was also in Troop D, and he was killed on duty in a road accident. The members of Troop D all let Ned hang around the barracks as they feel it's his way of remembering his dad. But Ned notices something in one of the police sheds, and it's a Buick. And there's something about that car that you don't like, man. And when Ned asks the police members about him, they all start to tell him some stories about just some strange occurrences that have happened within the presence of the car, and they have had the Buick stored in the shed for 20 years, kind of like a dirty secret. The novel then switches between timelines, with then being in the past and now being in the present. And it doesn't only switch timelines, it also switches character perspectives. So it's definitely a fairly original premise that isn't too similar to Christine, which is his first haunted car tale. And I'll be honest, it's pretty intriguing. This book definitely starts out decently enough. You have the characters and they're all likable enough. You feel some pity for Ned as he struggles to deal with his dad's death, and there's a nice bit of mystery with what's happened with this car. And some of the events that occur with the car are really, really cool and disgusting to read about, and I loved it. The problem that I had with this book is, like, the last 2/3 of the book. So the first third of the book is great, but the last 2/3 not so much. After a while, the events with the car get pretty repetitive, and the closer you get to the end of this book, the heavier the pages feel to turn. It just feels more like a chore each time you read a page. The characters, there's so many of them, and aside from Ned and Sandy, one of the other narrators, they all just morph into the one same person, and there's nothing really to distinguish any of them. And that's the thing, there is just, at the start of the book, there was a decent amount of character work, but the character work just kind of just fizzles out to nothing in the second half of the book. And this is where the pacing comes into play. The pacing at the start of the book is fine. There's a mystery aspect that keeps you reading, the characters are fairly endearing to read about, and there's really nothing wrong with the book. But it's when the mystery starts to die off, the characters turn into cardboard cutouts, and the events are predictable and not at all scary, that's when this book becomes slow and boring to read. Another issue that I have with this story is that the villain of the story, the Buick 8, isn't even remotely threatening. Sure, otherworldly monsters pop out of it, and members of the troop have been known to go missing in the presence of it. But when you're reading this, most of the members, you know, they're walking around the car, they're touching it, fiddling around with its engine, fucking around, climbing around in the boot of the car, but never once do I feel like, oh shit, what if they get sucked through? Or, oh shit, what if one of the monsters comes out? It was just like, you know, they're just feeling the car up and nothing. I don't feel anything. After about the halfway mark of this book, I just knew that nothing new was going to happen. And that's the thing with the second half of this book in particular. Nothing happens. I understand a lot of it is because Stephen King was on a hell of a lot of painkillers and still in a lot of pain while writing it. And I understand that the motto of the book is that we as humans have fascinations with deadly things, or deadly, because the car isn't, it's hardly even deadly. But yeah, that's the thing. The point is that humans have fascination with deadly things, and that our insistence to get answers so that we can sleep well at night sometimes just don't exist. And sometimes that's the point of the story. You don't get answers, you don't get structure, you don't get finality from it. Then, that leaves us with the point of this book. There is no point of this book. And I find that interesting because there's a part in this book, let me find it quickly. Let me just read out a part of this book, because this perfectly exemplifies my feelings when I'm reading this book, and more so my feelings after I've finished this book. Tell me everything, but this is important. Tell me a story, one that has a beginning, and a middle, and an end where everything is explained, because I deserve that. Don't shake the rattle of your ambiguity in my face. I deny its place. I repudiate its claim. I want a story. Well, friend, you have just summed up my feelings of this book in that little passage there. Holy shit. That's the thing. No answers, no beginning, no middle, no end, just a solid blob of writing. And again, that's the point. I understand that's the point, but when the book isn't building towards anything, and there isn't an ounce of curiosity, and the book isn't even trying to create that ounce of curiosity, I just think, why am I reading this? From a Buick 8 scores a straight 50% from me, and let me tell you how I did the maths from this. You ready? First half of the book, good. Last half of the book, bad. I know that this book has its fans, and I know a lot of people find it to be very underappreciated, which you can kind of see because there are some moments in here that are, like, you know, fun to read about, more towards the beginning of the book. But in summary, I just find it to be a very boring, uneventful mess that constantly changes narrative styles, which makes it a very convoluted and incoherent reading experience. Anyway, that's my review of From a Buick 8. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you later. Bye.